All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Menu Planning for Non-Congregate Meals. I see folks are still dialing in, so I'm going to go over some housekeeping instructions while everyone gets dialed in. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so we can't hear you and we can't see your video. Hopefully you can hear us and see ours. The best way to communicate with us as you have questions for our amazing speakers throughout today's webinar would be to find the Q&A box on your Zoom webinar software and send your questions there. We will have time today to get to your questions at the end of today's webinar, and we'll do our best to answer all of those. There is a chat box too. If you have ideas and best practices from your work that you'd like to share, feel free to use the chat feature just to share general information with folks. But if you have questions, please do send those in the Q&A box. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're really excited that this webinar has garnered so much attention, and I already see we have almost 375 people dialed in. So just thank you for taking the time and for all that you're doing to connect kids and families to food. We've got a really packed agenda today with some amazing speakers. So I'm going to do my best to keep this short up front and pass it over to them. My name is Emily Pia. I work for No Kid Hungry's Center for Best Practices on summer meals and on the community eligibility provision. I'm joined by my colleague Carolyn Waite Vega, who has been a rock star on our team for all things child nutrition policy and waiver extensions and non-congregate meal service, in addition to her infinite expertise on all things after school meals. We have her to thank for the suite of COVID-19 resources that we have on our best practices website. Carolyn and I are joined today by Jennifer McNeil. She's the founder of Lunch Assist and a former award-winning school nutrition director herself. We also have another award-winning school nutrition director, Miguel Villarreal from San Ramon Valley USD in California. And we also have Dr. Alicia Hall Campbell and Liz Dixon, who we're honored to have join us from the Institute of Child Nutrition. And they'll be sharing their expertise on food safety as we take non-congregate service into the warmer summer months after USDA's announcement last week, which I'm sure a lot of us on this call were excited to receive. So have a really great group of speakers today and really excited to have you all join us. Want to let you know that this webinar has been approved for all SNA members to receive one CEU. So at the end of this webinar, your browser should pop open and there will be a post-webinar evaluation and quiz that you can complete. And if you pass that quiz, then we'll be able to send you a certificate of your completion within 48 hours. Just a few resources we want to touch on before kicking it off today. Want to let you know that for the last 2 months and into the summer months, No Kid Hungry has been activating our texting hotline. So you can text food, or in Spanish, comida, to 877-877, and that will send your 3 closest meal sites at this time. We're currently operational in 44 states and Washington, D.C. So this is a really great resource to share with families, especially if you are more in the role of supporting meal service in your community or in your state. Really great resource for families to locate their meal sites nearest to them. We also do have promotional materials available at that link. So there's some sample posts that you can use on Twitter and Instagram just to spread the word. We also have a free Meals Finder map that's available in English and Spanish that has the same data. So also active in 44 states and DC, another resource that you can use to share with families to help them find food near them. And I'm going to pass it over to Carolyn to talk about COVID-19 waiver updates and that exciting news we received last week.
Yes, thank you, Emily. So we just wanted to cover this because it does set a lot of the context for this webinar about menu planning, because menu planning looks a little bit different these days because of all of these waivers and flexibilities to make things work during the current circumstances. So as I hope you have heard, the meal pattern waiver was extended through the end of June. So that's still apparently going month by month on extensions, but at least we do have that through the end of June if you're continuing to encounter supply chain issues with getting any meal components. And there is also the unanticipated school closure operations waiver. So rather than having to transition over to traditional summer meals and getting current applications in on the normal timelines, that can continue to June 30th if your state has opted into that waiver. And the great news that we got on Friday was that many waivers got extended through August 31st. That is the non-congregate waiver for all programs, the parent and guardian meal pickup waiver, and the meal service time waiver for school lunch, breakfast, and CACFP. The meal service time waiver for summer meals had already gotten extended through September 30th, although obviously without the non-congregate waiver to go along with it, it didn't mean quite so much, but now we do have all of those in place working together so that you can continue current operations of home delivery, curbside distribution, grab and go, what have you. And just a few other notes on the context, if we go to the next slide about specifically what relates to meal pattern guidance and menus. So in general, you're still expected to follow the meal pattern of whatever program you're claiming meals through. So if that's SFSP, that's the SFSP meal pattern. If it's Seamless Summer Option, that's the NSLP and school breakfast meal patterns. Again, that meal pattern waiver is available through June 30th to deal with supply chain issues. States may allow meals without milk or only one type of milk in SSO or the school programs without a waiver. So talk to your state about that. In general, at this time, offer versus serve is not being permitted, which generally makes sense if you're trying to do a grab and go style or delivery style, that you're not doing offer versus serve on someone's doorstep. The offer versus serve waiver for non-school SFSP sponsors did get extended through the summer, but my general understanding is that if you would then be continuing non-congregate service, you probably would not be doing offer versus serve, even though that waiver is available nationwide now. Another big flexibility offered not through a waiver, but through kind of Q&A clarification was that bulk items are permitted with some restrictions and guidance. So you're not giving out ingredients for a meal, but you don't necessarily have to portion everything into individual servings. So that's really helpful. Beyond that, though, there's wide flexibility for doing shelf-stable meals, cold meals, hot meals, reheatable meals, kind of whatever works for your capacity and the kids and families that you're serving. Another quick thing to mention is that 3 meals a day is acceptable using a combination of summer and after school meals right now. Not necessarily guaranteed to be the case through the summer, but at least for now, that is something to consider and plan for, is doing 3 meals a day, combining SFSP or SSO with CACFP at risk after school. Also, fresh fruit and vegetable program distributions are a possibility, and weekend meals are also a possibility, and that was confirmed to be okay through SFSP, SSO, or CACFP at risk. I already see a question coming through about bulk items. I think some of our speakers will go a little bit more in depth in that, but we can also address additional questions about what that means later on. And so just to sum up with some of our resources, we have updated our waiver summary to reflect the nationwide waiver extensions for non-congregate parent pickup, meal pattern, and meal service times. Just to note, our waiver summary does not include waivers for parents to pick up produce through fresh fruit and vegetable program. That's a state-by-state waiver, so our nationwide waiver summary does not include that. Likewise, states have received area eligibility waivers for open sites in SFSP and SSO, and because that's a state-by-state waiver, we don't have that captured, but that's just another thing to be aware of. So I think that sets enough context, and like Emily said, we have really great speakers today, so we don't want to take away any more time from them, but again, please do submit your questions throughout, and we will get to as many as possible.
Great, thanks so much, Carolyn. All right, and there's a link to where you can find all of those resources that Carolyn mentioned and summarized here. And I'll chat that in the chat in a moment. Would love to introduce Jennifer McNeil. Again, she's the founder of Lunch Assist and an award-winning child nutrition director, former child nutrition director from Encinitas Union School District and Hemet Unified School District, which are both in Southern California. Jen's passionate about farm to school and scratch cooking and supporting school nutrition professionals to take their programs to the next level. And we're really excited to have Jen join us and sharing her expertise. So Jen, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Emily. It was a very nice introduction. And thank you, Carolyn, for giving us a really good rundown of where we're at with the waivers. I think that's really important. And for those of you who haven't seen the waiver resource that No Kid Hungry put together, it's a beautiful resource, and definitely take a look at that if you're trying to kind of figure out where we're at now with everything. So yes, I'm here today just to share a little bit with you and get us kind of started with some menu planning. I'll talk about some of the bulk, the produce distribution, the bulk foods, and procurement, and share some nice photos of meal services. So like Emily shared, I'm from Lunch Assist, and on the next slide, we have a little snapshot of where you can find some of our resources and join our listserv and our community calls that we host. We've been hosting them every Thursday, and they're going to transition to bi-weekly, but we've partnered with the Center for Eco-Literacy and have some really nice resources, including these food safety cards and lunch menu templates that you see on the next slide that you can kind of access for emergency meal services. So take a look if you're interested in any free resources to use for COVID. And
sorry, Jen, I clicked the link and it's automatically opening my browser here. Let me try.
Oh no, that's what I get for hyperlinking my slides. Yes, so you can go ahead and go just click through these to the next section. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I always just like to take a moment to say thank you to everyone, all of you who are on the calls, who are supporting schools or who are serving meals on the front lines, are really unsung heroes and first responders in the context of what's going on in this crisis. And there's a beautiful photo of the team from Mount Diablo Unified School District, who was featured recently as unsung heroes. And it's just, you know, you guys are building systems on the fly, and all of us who support schools are just absolutely in awe of your work and happy to help in whatever way we can right now. I will be sharing a few photos to get us started on menu planning and meal services, and then I'll give you a few of my best tips and tricks right now for menu planning. And so the first photo we have here is of Natomas Unified, who some of you may be familiar with the great work that they've done. Vince Coggin is their director, and they've done some amazing work with school food marketing and have built this food truck in partnership with No Kid Hungry, which the students have called the Lunch Box. And they've just done an amazing job during emergency meal services. You can see the local produce that they've sourced on the next slide. They've been actually really doing a great job of still managing to meet the meal pattern requirements and having like our beautiful dark green vegetables there, and keeping the integrity of a lot of the programs that they operate when school's in service. We have some beautiful salads on the next slide as well, and a photo of one of the students' favorite meals that's served from the lunchbox, their mac and cheese with chicken that was served with a side of nutrition education. So they've also been able to maintain very high participation, in part, number one, because they're awesome and they have this beautiful team that has such good teamwork. They have beautiful food, and they are also enticing people to come in with things like nutrition education and lots of little extra enrichment activities as they can, that can be kind of like grab and go enrichment that's provided with the meals. Irene and her team at Ollie Fall School District were a zero waste program before the crisis, and they actually made most of their food from scratch and had reusable lunch trays and even reusable sporks. And they had to figure out, like many of you, how to package meals for the first time, and have done so despite supply chain shortages on both food and packaging materials. I think this photo was taken during one of the first couple of days when they just didn't even have access to bags or trays, and then those started becoming really hard to get. So people have gotten really creative with the way they've packaged up the food, and still been trying to serve fresh meals when possible and utilizing packaged foods as well. And then I have some great photos of the bulk meal kits from Sarah's Daughtery at North Monterey Unified School District. So these guys have seen great success with multiple day meal kits that also include bulk foods. And what they've done has transitioned, actually now they're up to providing 7 days worth of meals, and again have very high participation. It's almost the same as it is during the regular year, while they're procuring local produce and bulk items. You can see here they have 1 pound bags of baby carrots, pints of cherry tomatoes, and broccoli crowns that meet the vegetable servings. And then on the next slide, there's sort of a little inside peek into what's in the meals. So not everything is in bulk. The produce is in bulk, but the other items are still a mix of packaged items. And her team actually kind of preps everything ahead of time, and then the frozen stuff goes in the freezer, the cold stuff goes in the cooler, and then the room temperature items get to stay out until they're ready to serve. And I know this is a really difficult system for her to build at first, the first couple of weeks, but then now that they've got it in place, they've got very high participation. It's very popular with the families, and it's going really well. Their staff is able to have a break and not have to come in every single day. So some of my best tips and tricks for menu planning right now, I mean, there's so many amazing things going on in the field, and the words of wisdom I'm sharing are things I've learned from all of you. So I would say keep it simple if you can. Be flexible and creative so that you can use your existing inventory and plan for supply chain shortages when product doesn't come in. I know a lot of us are ordering product and then getting half of it, or ordering items and getting a substitution. So we have to be really flexible, which we all know how to do really well in this industry. Take advantage of the waivers. In particular, the multiple day meal kits can really help with increasing participation and supporting parents in their transition back to work, so that there's food for the kids, but they don't have to visit a meal site every single day. Bulk produce and bulk milk in particular, like gallons or quarts of milk, can be super helpful from a waste standpoint and also support local purchasing. And consider sending home weekend and holiday meals to provide the additional nutrients our kids need, and also help increase participation and reimbursement for your program. I also want to point out that it's really important to communicate with families, community partners, and your team so that everyone knows what to expect from the meal services, and consider sending home some information and activities like the enrichment on the go that Natomas Unified is doing. There's some great partnerships with local libraries and lots of free resources available. And then I really encourage everyone to look into purchasing local foods. And I know someone is asking about DoD Fresh in the chat box as well. So we have some information about that on the next couple of slides. So when we look at farm to school and how that supports what we're doing right now, this is something that I know at first when we thought we were just going to be shut down for a couple of weeks may have been really difficult to think about how we're going to keep up our farm to school or local purchasing, or even start it for the first time. But if you're able to do this, it's very important for a lot of reasons. And I'll show you a few images of what some folks are doing. Brentwood Union School District is still actually supporting their school garden, which has some beautiful produce coming into season that they're packing out in emergency meal kit salads. And Lodi Unified School District is actually purchasing from local farmers and providing bulk meal kits for fresh fruit and vegetable programs, which are allowable in one of the Q&A documents. So those can be sent home for the week. And if your state has a parent meal pickup, it can be picked up by parents, but if your state doesn't have an FFVP parent meal pickup, those FFVP servings still need to be picked up by students. So check with your state agency exactly to be sure that you're operating your FFVP correct for your area. But this has been a great option in California where there is a parent meal pickup and they're able to send home bulk meal kits, like so FFVP servings for the week. And if you don't know what FFVP is, then that's okay. It's just the fresh fruit and vegetable program, and not every school has that. It's a particular program that only some schools operate. But those dollars do need to be spent by the end of June. And then Sonoma Valley is also providing some school garden produce, and we just love this image with the American flag bandana. And they're also using their DoD fresh produce. So they have the image on the right is packing out DoD fresh produce, which is often local or at least from your state. And this has been really critical to promote food security in their community. And other school districts are offsetting order disruptions for school food distributors by bringing in some of the products from local farms that would have otherwise gone to waste. I'm sure we've all seen some of the images in the media of cabbage and lettuce and different produce items being destroyed, which is just horrible. And as much as we can do to mitigate some of that waste with our school nutrition dollars, it's more important than ever. So if you're looking for some more resources, I would definitely point you in the direction of the National Farm to School Network, and also encourage you to reach out to local and regional partners in your state or county. I know in California, we have some amazing support from the Community Alliance with Family Farmers and the Farm to Institution Center, and I'm sure that every state has various regional and state partners that will help support your efforts if you're looking to connect with farmers who have an abundance of produce right now. Okay, great. And the last thing I'll mention is about procurement and purchasing. So if you're wondering how to set up with a new vendor during this time or to purchase from a local farmer, keep in mind that there's a couple of flexibilities that you have. So number one is emergency procurement. So and I asterisk all of this with check with your state agency because regulations do vary by state. But at a national level, the emergency procurement is basically just a non-competitive procurement that is allowed during the COVID-19 emergency. So you can solicit from a single source and basically purchase in a non-competitive manner as long as you keep proper records. It does need to be a contract that's limited in duration, so definitely nothing multi-year, and usually it should be something that's just purchased for a few months in general. But check with your state on that, just keep that in the back of your mind. And then micro purchasing is something that we always have in our toolkit. It's something that for the national threshold, it's at or below 10,000, but that can vary by state or even by your own district policies. And micro purchasing is really designed for a single transaction or transactions that are spread equitably, for instance, among 3 or 4 different farmers. And that can help you connect with local farmers or any other suppliers in your area that are providing food or bags or PPE that you need to purchase right now, and that you don't have the bandwidth to go out to a bid or solicitation with. Okay, so I think that wraps it up. Just a reminder, you can always reach out to us at Lunch Assist, and yeah, we are so proud of the work you guys are doing, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much, Jen. That was a lot of information. And so if you have questions for Jen, please do send those in the question box. And now, without further ado, we're going to introduce Miguel Villarreal. He is the Child Nutrition Director at San Ramon Valley USD and has over 30 years of experience in public schools, pioneering healthy food and really redefining the role of school food service. He is also an advocate of farm to school alongside Jen, so good person to ask questions about how to operationalize that as we head into non-congregate summer operations. And just want to call out that, again, we're so honored to have Miguel join us. He's a rock star, and his work has garnered the attention of Huffington Post and Wall Street Journal and has brought him invitations to the White House in 2010 and recognition from USDA. So really just an all-around great person to have join us and talk about menu planning for non-congregate meal service. So Miguel, take it away.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate that introduction. And I honestly appreciate it most because of who we represent. I mean, not just the fact that we're representing ourselves, but really this industry. But before I say anything, I just want to also thank Jen for her awesome presentation. If you haven't gone to her website, it's been an awesome place to get lots of information. She shared a lot, but she has a lot more information that she has on her website that we used right from literally from day one when we started this non-congregate feeding. So thank you, Jen, for all you're doing as well. These are the faces of our team, but honestly, these are the faces of school food service directors, administrators, and so forth around the country that have really stepped up to the plate. I mean, who would ever have known that these people were so awesome? I know the answer. We did. We've known all along. Okay, the country has now figured it out, and that's the advantage that we have, is that everybody else now knows the importance of the work that we're doing in our schools each and every day. I mean, we took a program literally that was full salad bars, people serving themselves and so forth, literally overnight to no touch points, seeing what you're seeing here, where people are wearing masks and looking out for their safety. So, I think for me, what brought it to the forefront is when I saw the cover of Time magazine, the food service people from the Dallas Independent School District featured talking about the essential role that they play. These folks didn't run away. They actually ran into this pandemic to try to figure out how do we take care of our children. And this is no different of what they've been doing for decades. The next slide, I want to just show you that early on, safety was a major concern of ours. And as you can see, one of the things that Jen had in her slides was the fact that, we're working 6 feet apart and so forth. So we were right from the onset making sure that everybody was safe, taking care of our employees, making sure that we were taking care of our families. And of course, we've always made sure that their food was safe. So that was important. But now we had that extra added condition, if you will, that we had to also look out for our staffs, making sure that they were safe. So I've got a few slides just kind of show you some of the things that we're doing in our school district, but I've seen this around the country as well. So, so if you go to the next slide, Emily. So when we're setting up at when we're setting up at our curb services, early on when we set these up, we were actually having families. We see the food there on the tables. We were actually placing the food into the trunks of these cars. And as we, got more and more information about COVID and what we should and shouldn't do, we also made sure that as families came up, they told us how many people they had in their car. We actually had them move up to another table. Families actually get out. We have the food on the tables. They pick up their own food. And these families are also wearing masks. And as you can see, we've been right from the onset. We have been using tents all around to keep the food at temps. We happen to have in our school district refrigerator trucks that we bring out to all these sites. So all this food is kept in these refrigerated trucks. But if you don't have refrigerated trucks, refrigeration is so important to keep making sure that we keep food safe. So if you go to the next slide, please, and I think it's just shows you what I was talking about having people move up. All right, so next slide, please. Jen mentioned this earlier. So one of the things that we're obviously still trying to maintain a fiscal budget. So our goal was to use up as much inventory that we had in our freezers, because we recall we went from March 13th with our refrigerators and freezers full of food to March 16th doing this non-congregate feeding. So we had a lot of food that we had to use up, and we had to get creative. And here we're making a lasagna. So I just wanted to, I'm going through a few slides showing you some of the things that we've done. We've used existing inventory items. Go to the next slide. And you see, again, some more. These are burritos that we had on hand, and we're packaging them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with some of these frozen items. And as we put in foods in there, next slide, please. We're also providing our families, I think Jen talked about it earlier in her presentation. Maybe not, but I know on her website, she's got cooking instructions that we're providing. This slide, I just want to show you that early on in our particular school district and in our area, we were one of the first areas that were considered shelter in place. So the heightened awareness for safety really ramped up. And so how do we keep employees safe? So with what we were doing, so what we did early on is we actually contracted with Revolution Foods for about a month to look out for the safety of our employees as we started to make plans to how do we utilize our existing inventory and bring in new inventory as well. So this is another way some districts are also utilizing services. So next slide, please. Here's what I was sharing with you earlier, is that what we're doing with some of these frozen items. We're providing families with cooking instructions as well on every item that we provide in the meal, so they know exactly how to store the food and how to cook the food as well. So we've heard feedback from our families, and they greatly appreciate that. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of some of the ways that we're trying to, or not that we're trying, that we're actually bagging some of this food. We're using milk crates in some instances to put them on these carts. We take these carts, put them back in our refrigerated truck. I know that I realize it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for us. And before we used the refrigerated trucks, actually, we were just taking this food. We had brought in some refrigerators. We were placing it all in the refrigerators and bringing it out as we needed. So I think Jen said it earlier, is that we're all being creative, and we're all constantly evolving and trying to come up with new ways of trying to provide these meals to our students. One of the things that we did in our district as well is we went to the larger milk size containers. So we actually are now providing a quart container, and we're moving to a half-gallon container here pretty soon because we're offering multi-day meals. So on Mondays, we'll provide the half-gallon of milk versus providing that milk even on Wednesday as well. So the multiple meals has worked for our district, and we have new families that are now coming out. And in California, we also have another program where the state is providing the pandemic EBT cards for our families. And so one of the things that we're constantly doing as well is reaching out to our community through communications, whether that be through newsletters or social media, but the communication is ongoing. One of the things that we did early on as well is make sure that our administration was also aware of the work that we were doing. So for about a 3 or 4 week period, I had about 2 to 3 administrators come out to the sites every time we were serving. That was principals, they could be superintendent, assistant superintendent, HR directors. It gave them a good insight as to what we were doing and what it took to provide these meals. And so I know that that's helped quite a bit in terms of getting the word out in our communities. So instead of running these programs in an isolated manner. Okay, so next slide, please. So one of the things was, with the help of Lunch Assist, we were able to get one of our flyers early on. This flyer has had so many different renditions. I mean, it's, as I said, we've gone out to just Mondays and Wednesdays but this information is constantly being updated and sent to our families. Even during spring break, we were able to serve in our school district. So I can't stress enough the importance of communication and working with your communications department, working with your local newspapers, working with your local TV stations. I mean, these are things that I'm hearing also around the country. Food service directors doing all these things in food service programs, making sure that we're constantly communicating this information. I mean, even today, one of the things that we did in our district, we only have 6% free and reduced, which equates to about 1,600 students that qualify for free meals, and actually another 300 that qualify for reduced. So not a lot of students, as you realize. So one of the things that we were able to do is to contact all of our families by phone, because we wanted to be sure that they knew. We still have families that are still not aware of these programs, and our principals are helping out in that regard as well. So next slide, please. So just lastly, the thing that I want to just give you real, Jen talked about the National Farm to School Network, a few resources. So in addition to Jen's great Lunch Assist resource, I want to just put a plug in for the Farm to School network. They've got some great information. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, you know, we're coming into harvest season here soon, and there'll be, and working with many local, we're actually out networking right now with our farmers markets and some of our local farmers as well, in terms of how can we coordinate some of their products back into our schools with our program, because some of these farmers markets that aren't open. So the National Farm to School Network has a lot of information about how you can do that. I also want to put a plug in for the Chef Ann Foundation. There's a lot of great resources there as well that you can utilize while we're in pandemic COVID-19. And then lastly, you may not have heard of Crop Mobster. It started out here in California, but they've got a great website. It's just a great resource for all of us around the country in terms of sharing. So you might have, for example, school gardens that are maybe overflowing with produce. And so this is a way to get information in Crop Mobster, saying how can I get product, or I have product available in our community, and I need to get it out. You know, I don't want it to go to waste, so I'm trying to get it out, and how can I do that? Crop Mobster, just if you look that up, you'll see how it's a wonderful resource for every community, no cost, lots of great resources. So Emily, that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much again, all of you, for being here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Miguel, for all of the same. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us today, and have lots of great questions coming into the Q&A. So we'll come back to you. And I'm really excited to introduce some more great speakers. We have joining us Dr. Alicia Hall Campbell, who is the Executive Director of the Institute of Child Nutrition, and she provides leadership and oversight on all of the activities offered by the Institute. She's responsible for overseeing the development of research-based educational resources, curricula, and trainings to promote the continuous improvement of child nutrition programs nationwide. And she has over 20 years of experience in this field, so we're really grateful to have her join us. And she's also joined by her colleague Liz Dixon, who is an education and training specialist for the ICN. She has a master's in food, nutrition, and culinary service, and 16 years of experience in this field as well. And she is very, very excited to talk to you about food safety today. She told us before the webinar started. So really excited to have them joining us today, and take it away, Dr. Hall Campbell and Liz.
Hey, thanks Emily and Carolyn, and to the staff of Share Our Strength. We're really excited and appreciative of this opportunity to showcase our summer food service program resources and tips as we transition to the summer months. Next slide, please. We just want to pause before we start our presentation and just say thank you. Thank you to the frontline heroes who are on the front lines every day serving meals to our children. Your job and roles are extremely important and critical to maintaining the health and nutritious aspects of our nation's children. So we just want to pause and just say thank you. And we do value and appreciate the work that you do every day. Next slide. Since COVID-19, ICN has launched a landing page of educational resources for good personal hygiene and cleaning and sanitizing techniques. In addition, we have linked to other allied organizations, including their COVID-19 resources. So be sure to check that out. It's on our ICN homepage, but also you can find the link at icn.org/prevent. You can download all of our resources that are specific to addressing COVID-19, as well as, again, highlighting those allied organizational resources. Also on this slide, you'll see some of our featured new hand washing posters. These are really good to post around how to wash your hands, when to wash your hands, and effective hand washing techniques. So again, these are a really good resource you can post around your operation as well. Next slide. ICN and USDA work collaboratively to create the Child Nutrition Sharing Site. This is an online information center providing child nutrition programs a means for sharing effective resources related to program operations. So the best way to describe this is it's a centralized sharing repository of information. So instead of going to multiple sites to find information on menus and anything related to child nutrition, ICN is housing all of these resources in a one-stop shop. Allied organizations, district directors and operators can submit resources, as well as state agencies. So we highly encourage you guys to any resources to please submit those so we can house those on the CNSS. We're really excited about this being available as a really good resource for child nutrition professionals. Next slide. Also, additionally, ICN hosts the USDA recipes in what has been relaunched as the Child Nutrition Recipe Box. And again, as you're thinking about creative and new standardized recipes you'd like to incorporate in your menus, we strongly encourage you to check out the Child Nutrition Recipe Box. It's organized by schools and childcare as well. And once you're in, you can kind of categorized by various entree items, desserts, and things like that, fruits and vegetables. So it's a really good resource for standardized recipes that meet the meal pattern requirements. Next slide. So because our focus is more on the food safety aspects, we've kind of highlighted and featured some of our food safety resources. You can identify and locate those at theicn.org/food safety. There are standard operating procedures, posters, videos, fact sheets, a wealth of resources, as well as our online courses. Also, we want to promote the Summer Meals Food Safety Training Guide. And as Liz picks up, she'll go through some of the strategies and tips to maintain an effective summer meals program. Additionally, next slide, these resources have been translated to Spanish. And so it's a one-stop shop of the Spanish resources that are available. And again, you can check that out at theicn.org/Espanol. Next slide. We do want to feature and promote some free online courses. Again, all of our online courses, which we have almost 70 self-paced online courses that meet the SNA certification, as well as the USDA professional standards requirements. They are self-paced. You can log on from any mobile device, tablets, cell phones, desktop computers, to log in and access these online courses. But these three courses are sort of micro-learning courses. They're about 15 minutes each. And these courses feature best practices in SFSP, cleaning and sanitizing, personal hygiene, and time and temperature control. Again, we have almost 70 online courses, so you can go in. They're categorized by food safety, school nutrition, CACFP, general operational topics as well. So be sure to check that out if you have any questions or need to fulfill your professional development requirements. Next slide. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Liz Dixon, who is our food safety specialist, and she's going to go over some strategies and tips for food safety and SSFP. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Very glad to be here today. There's a lot of information on these slides that you'll be able to take home. We're not going to cover everything today. In fact, I want to focus on some of the main issues we have seen in FSSP on the different slides, but I wanted to make sure that you had the information for you. So with food safety, you kind of focus on three main topics. You have your personal hygiene. This is your how to wash your hands. This is not working when sick, as well as making sure you don't touch food with your bare hands. You have your time and temperature control. This is making sure that your food stays in the proper time and temperatures throughout the food service process. And you're cleaning and sanitizing your dishes, your equipment, and your food contact surfaces. Next slide, please. So it's always really important that you or your employees report symptoms of a foodborne illness. You're vomiting, diarrhea, sore throat with fever, jaundice, which is yellowing of the skin or eyes, open cuts, sores and wounds, or if you have a foodborne illness diagnosed by a doctor. But as you know, with the ongoing situation right now, you have other symptoms that are very important to keep up with, and those are the COVID-19 symptoms. And the best way to be aware of those symptoms is go to cdc.gov/coronavirus. As we learn more, they're able to update that information. Next slide, please. So we know hand washing is really important. I'm sure you've seen tons of videos on YouTube. Shout outs to how to wash your hands. It is the #1 defense against foodborne illness. Very important. The steps are listed out here, but I wanted to feature one step that I see forgotten all the time, and that is number 6. Once you have got those hands, you scrubbed and lathered and gone all the way up to the elbows and in between the fingers and in the nail beds and behind the wrists and all that. It's very important that when you're drying your hands with that paper towel that you use the paper towel to turn off the sink. You turned it on with dirty hands, so if you touch that sink faucet again, you're recontaminating your hands. So really, after you've done all the lovely scrubbing and gotten all those germs off, making sure that when you dry your hair with those paper towels, use that paper towel to turn off the sink. And, if you have a door, also using the paper towel to open that door. Next slide, please. So you may not always have at SFSP sites the availability of a hand washing sink. Ideally, when it comes to hand washing versus hand sanitizer, hand washing is your best practice. So you can, for places that don't have a hand washing sink, set up a portable hand washing station. You just need like a 5-gallon or whatever gallon bucket of water with a continuous flow spigot so that it flows continuously, some soap, paper towels, and a discard bucket, and you can make your own portable hand washing facility. Next slide, please. Very important, no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. These are foods that don't need any additional preparation, washing, cooking, etc. Bare hands, they can have germs, they can cause foodborne illness. You can either wear single-use gloves or use appropriate utensils such as tongs, spatulas, and spoons to prevent this. Either or works. The next slide, please. But what is really important with glove use is to use it correctly. You want to make sure that you're using the gloves the right way. And when you're dealing with food, the point of the gloves is to protect the food from you. So you have to remember that the gloves are protecting the food. So always wash your hands before putting on gloves. Never reuse or wash them. Make sure you dispose of them when they're soiled. And if you cough, sneeze, touch your face, touch your hair, take the gloves off, wash your hands, put on a new pair. And if you touch something other than food, doorknobs, trash, money, anything, gloves come off, wash your hands, change your gloves. Next slide, please. So I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with the temperature danger zone. According to the 2017 FDA Food Code, 41 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. This is where bacteria grows rapidly. It can double in number in as little as 20 minutes. And you really want to keep food out of this. Next slide, please. To do this, you can use a food thermometer. Make sure it's calibrated so it's not accidentally reading low. and you're not getting food cooked to the right temperature. Make sure it's clean, rinsed, sanitized, and air dry, that metal stem before and after use. Especially important in between foods so you don't accidentally spread allergens from food to food, as well as possible microorganisms. You want to check and record those temperatures and make sure make sure that you check them. And every thermometer is going to have a little dimple on it. You want to make sure that dimple goes all the way into the food to make sure you can get an accurate reading. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of temperatures on the next couple of slides. As I said, I'm going to kind of focus on some of the main points, and you'll have the temperatures when the presentation is sent to you. But just make sure you check your temperatures of your refrigerated foods and your frozen foods when you get them. Make sure you check those frozen foods that they're not accidentally thawed. The boxes aren't wet. There's no large ice crystals in the food. And then you want to put your food away, refrigerated items first, because they're closest to the temperature danger zone, and then your freezer items, and then your dry goods. Next slide, please. For your food storage temperatures, keep these areas clean and sanitized, and you want to use appliance thermometers to monitor the temperatures for those too. Make sure you cover, label, and date all your food items, and as you can see, you want to make sure you keep them in the recommended temperature ranges. Next slide, please. Cooking temperatures, these are very important. You want to make sure you cook your food to the proper internal temperature for that food that is associated with the microorganisms in that food to wipe them out. So we have tons of resources available on proper cooking temperatures and where you can get them on our website. Next slide, please. Now in the summer, a lot of holding foods. So you want to keep those hot foods hot, those cold foods cold. Some ways you can do this with holding food is try as close to serving time as possible. And once you reach that internal cooking temperature, keeping that food above 135 degrees, definitely use a food thermometer to check that food and record the temperatures. If you're using those cooler items, keeping them in the fridge, or cooler to keep them at 41 degrees or below. Next slide, please. For transporting food, this will kind of sort of depend on the food, what kind of food you have, but you make sure you pack that food in wash, rinse, and sanitize food grade containers that are preferably rigid or sectioned, very non-porous to avoid leakage. Some food items like a sandwich could obviously go in like a sandwich bag, but you wouldn't want to put a soup in a sandwich bag. You want them to close tightly to minimize spillage and retain temperature, and they need to be easy to clean or disposable. You can use ice packs, and I also forgot to put, there's heat packs as well, with coolers and insulated bags to help hold food at safe temperatures. And you want to make sure you're scheduling delivery times to minimize the amount of time it has to be in that cooler. Use an appliance thermometer, and refrigerators, coolers, or insulated bags. For your cold food, you're going to want to put it in the warmest spot, and for your hot food, you're going to want to put it in the coolest spot, so you make sure those spots are maintaining temperature, and generally it's going to be near the lid or door. And you want to make sure you have a food thermometer to check that food before and after delivery, and always record temperatures. Next slide, please. Serving foods, just remind your serving staff if they're not the same as your prep staff. Keep hot foods hot, cold foods cold. Practice that good personal hygiene. Make sure the children wash their hands before eating, or if the parents are picking up food, use some hand sanitizer. And then talking to your local state health department or state agency if you have any kind of leftover food and what to do with that. Next slide, please. So cooling and reheating procedures, this is especially important if you're preparing any kind of food early, if you're making those bulk meals or handling any kind of leftovers. You want to make sure you cool food safely, that two-step process, bringing it from 135 to 70 degrees within 2 hours, and then that 70 to 41 within the next 4 hours. There's plenty of cooling methods that we have available. You can pre-chill any ingredients, separate food in smaller portions, cut up that turkey, or put that soup in smaller containers that are no more than 2 inches deep. Or use chill sticks and paddles with ice baths. So you want to make sure you stir and replace frequently. And also you can cool food, loosely cover it and put it on the top shelf of a fridge or freezer. If you're reheating food, you want to bring it back up to 165 for 15 seconds within 2 hours of starting the reheating process. Next slide, please. For your FSSP sites that are possibly non-traditional and never handle a 3-compartment sink, wash, rinse, sanitize, air dry. Scrape off that food before you wash. Keep that dishwasher and soap warm. Use that clean water to rinse, and with your sanitizer, prepare any chemical sanitizer according to the manufacturer's instructions. If you're using the hot water sanitizer, 171 degrees for 30 seconds. Make sure you allow everything to dry on an air rack. And don't dry it with a cloth or any kind of paper towel, because you may accidentally recontaminate it. Next slide, please. Similar, if you're using a dish machine, scrape the food particles into a trash can before loading a dishwasher. Make sure if you use a heat final temperature, keeping it 160 or above. Chemical sanitizer, make sure you test the chemical sanitizer concentration, but very, very important, always make sure you wash your hands in between handling dirty dishes and clean dishes. You always see people load the dishwasher and turn around and try to grab it. You want to make sure that you're not handling the dirty dishes and the clean. And next slide, please. I think it's Q&A time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you to all our speakers today. Really, again, so grateful that you're here. We have a couple minutes for Q&A, and if we don't have time to get to your questions today, I'm going to do my best to follow up with you via email afterwards. I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn. She's going to moderate our Q&A for us. So go ahead and take it down off mute. Great.
Yes. So just note, I have been sharing some information and links, and thanks to our speakers who have also been answering questions as we've gone along within the Q&A section of Zoom webinar. So look for an answer there. And for those of you that have let me know that links don't open from the Q&A box, we will be sure to follow up with those after the webinar. We got a question about whether or not the SNACU is the same thing as the USDA professional learning standards. They are aligned, but I would check with your state agency about what documentation they require and what they accept, and you can follow up with us if you need more information afterward. Okay, diving into the meat of things. We got a few questions about the number of meals per day that are reimbursable. So that leads me to believe that I explained that very unclearly. So what USDA has said is currently allowable is that you can operate both SFSP or SSO concurrent with CACFP at risk, as long as you're serving different meals through each program. So that would allow you to serve a breakfast and lunch through a summer meal program, plus a meal and or snack through CACFP at risk. So to the person who said, would it be 4 per day, breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper? Yes, you are correct. You could do breakfast, lunch, supper, and snack. Someone else asked about the after school snack program. There was a waiver of the activity requirements for both NSLP after school snacks and CACFP at risk after school. I would work with your state agency on what's going to be the best program option for you. The usual rules require that you can only do NSLP after school snacks on school days, so that may still be okay if you're doing distance learning, but again, would just work with your state agency to figure out the best mix of programs. But USDA has said that in general, you can kind of mix those programs together to be able to serve more meals per day. However, this is not likely, or at least not guaranteed, to be able to continue on during the summer. So for now, that is okay. CACFP at risk and NSLP are usually, again, during the school year. So at least for now, that's okay. Don't bank on that for the summer. We'll stay tuned for more guidance or updates. Related, someone asked if the area eligibility waivers for open sites in SFSP or SSO would get extended. We don't know. It's certainly something we are working on advocating for, but we don't have any kind of idea or timeline of what the likelihood is on that. Okay. Hopefully I explained that more clearly. We got a great question for Liz, so I will give you a second to come off of mute here. And someone asked, what would be the best way to clean a food thermometer with probe wipes in short supply and no access to, standard dishwashing if they are away from the kitchen and using these on site?
So if you're in a kitchen, obviously you can use the 3-compartment sink, wash, rinse, and sanitize. For offsite, I would encourage trying to have a kind of a bucket system for washing and rinsing, like Like if you're going to a site, you could have a bucket with soapy water, a bucket with rinse water, and a bucket with sanitizer that you can come and set up your own 3-compartment sink there to make sure that you're still getting the metal stem of the thermometer washed, rinsed, and sanitized.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone wanted to clarify the 4 meals is not an option for the summer, correct? That is our understanding, that during the summer that it would just be the standard meal plus snack or breakfast plus another meal. Okay. Someone asked a general question. I don't know if anyone else would want to weigh in on what they think the best times are for distributing meals. Miguel or maybe Jen, if you want to weigh in on that one, what you think the best times are for distributing meals.
Sure, I can kind of mention, I think trying to work with your community to see like what works best, but as people go back to work, remember that you don't have to serve meals in the middle of the day. So it could be advantageous to do something like later in the day, especially if you're doing meal pickup once a week. The example I shared with Sarah Daugherty from North Monterey, she actually offers meals on Mondays only for the whole week, but she offers 2 meal pickup times, once during the middle of the day and once in the evening. And then she does use a POS to ensure program accountability and integrity, just to keep track of those meals and make sure there's no duplicate meals. But as people are going back to work, it may be more difficult to get folks out in the middle of the day. And also those of you who are in really hot regions of the country, you may take advantage of the meal service time flexibility and consider offering meals at non-traditional times this summer in particular.
Great, thank you for that. Miguel, do you have anything you want to add?
No, nothing. I think Jen covered it well, and she's absolutely right that we've got to be as flexible as we can in all of our communities. I know there's lots of questions about how, we're doing this or doing that, and it really is just talking to my colleagues around the country. We're all doing just something just a little bit different. We're trying to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. That's probably the most important thing that all of us can do, and that's why communication is so important.
Yes. Well, we are at time. I think we have answered most of the questions that we did not get a chance to type an answer to. Quickly, someone asked how many meals can you distribute at one time? USDA has generally said it's okay to offer meals for up to a week at a time across all of the programs that you may be serving through. So with that, I will turn it back over to Emily to just quickly wrap us up here, but thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining, for taking the time today, for our wonderful speakers. I wish we could all give them a round of applause, but we're all virtual and you wouldn't hear us, but we're in spirit giving you a round of applause. So thank you again. I will do my best to follow up with everyone who's asked a question who we haven't been able to answer live. Again, as soon as we close this webinar, a quiz will pop up in your browser. If you're interested in the SNA CEU, complete that quiz and we'll follow up with a certificate. That's all from us, and thanks again, everyone, so much.